I shall be stripping down this carburettor, cleaning it and rebuilding it. I shan't be using accessories such as airline, carburettor spray, ultrasonic cleaners and drills for removing Welch plugs, because I'm aware that not everybody has access to these types of accessories. Now, I'm not saying the way I'm going to show you is better than using these accessories. I'm simply saying that if you don't have access to these, then there is still a way of cleaning your carburettor and servicing it. This carburettor fits a small Honda moped type motorcycle. This is a relatively new carburettor, so it won't be so dirty inside. But in the past I have used the methods I'm going to show you to clean quite dirty carburettors. Okay, when the carburettor's off the machine, I'd have a good visual check. Are the linkages working? Are they moving? And have a look down inside in the venturi to see if anything was obstructing. The choke lever working okay? Is it free? And have a look down inside there. The butterfly's okay and I can't see any obstructions from this side. And is there any visible cracks, any obvious damage? And so if I was happy with all of that, I'd take a Phillips screwdriver and remove the 2 screws at the bottom of the carburettor here that hold the float bowl on. And so now the float bowl's removed, we can see the components. To remove the O-ring here and take a good look at it. Is there any tears or cracks, or is there any flattened parts on there that would suggest it won't seal properly? And then we slide this pin out here, and that then allows us to remove the float. We just lift it up like that, but what comes with it that's attached to it is the needle valve. Just gently slide it off to have a good look at the needle valve itself. We've got a rubber part at the top. The surface of it is nice and flat and constant. There's no ridges, so we can use this one again, but if there is any signs of physical damage, that will need to be replaced. You can turn it round and have a look at the other side of it. This looks okay. The frame that attaches it to the float looks well and there's no damage. Take a look at the float itself and make sure there's no damage there where the needle valve sits, no cracks, no bends, etc. And then we look here at the float part. This should be sealed because it is a float, of course. If you wanted to be thorough, you could just get a bowl of water, place the float inside of it, try and submerge it to see if there's any bubbles rising, and that would indicate there is any leaks in there, and this is fine. Generally though, you don't need to go this far because you can find evidence of fluid inside the float. If it's leaking, you can just shake it and hear it. Now we can move back to the carb body. The top of the jet here needs to be screwed out, but this is made of brass. We have to make sure we get a flat screwdriver that's almost the width or the same width as it, so that we don't damage it in any way. Screw it out counterclockwise. When we've removed this little brass part of the main jet, we need to have a look through the centre. It should look nice and clear like that. But if you do find you don't have a clear hole like this, then no problem, because we'll be going through how to clear it soon. And so now we can look down into the main jet itself. We need to remove this to clean it, so we'll turn the carburettor upside down and that should just fall out. If not, we give it a tap on the bench and it should come out. And this component that's come out here is the emulsion tube. And as you can see, this is made of brass as well, and there's many holes in there, and they all have to be nice and clear, just like this is. And again, if yours isn't clear like this and it is obstructed, I shall be going through very shortly on how to clear it. And so back to the carb body, and the next thing I'd remove is this adjustment screw here. Screw that out counterclockwise and remove it completely. And we'll need to remove this screw here to get access to more fuel holes, and to do that we'll need to remove this screw here which operates the throttle. And now we can get access to this screw here, so we'll need a Phillips screwdriver and again counterclockwise, and we'll remove this screw. And very shortly we'll be looking down this hole here, and now we're going to clean it. Right round to the other side, and there's another adjustment screw just here. Take it right out, again counterclockwise. And we'll take a quick look at this fuel adjustment screw here to make sure there's no bends in it or any damage, and that looks absolutely fine. The next thing I'd like to do is remove the Welch plug so I can clean behind it. The only unfortunate thing is, in order to remove them, you have to damage them. And the way I remove them without using a drill is to use a screw. We just simply place the screw onto the Welch plug like that and tap the top of the screw with an hammer. And we do so just enough to sink the head of the screw there, just a couple of millimeters, into the actual Welch plug itself. Take the Phillips screwdriver and continue to screw the screw into the Welch plug. And as the screw continues to screw through the soft metal, you'll soon find that it will touch the carb body behind it. And as it touches the carb body, it starts to lift off the Welch plug itself, and thus removing it. we can see the screw sticking through the core plug and how far it went in order for it to push it off its seat. And another benefit of removing the plugs like this is the minimal damage there next to the fuel holes, unlike using a drill sometimes, which can actually physically damage the body as a result of the drill passing through the Welch plug and touching the carb body. Okay, so now I want to make sure that all is clear and clean where the main jet was, so I'll shine a flashlight through the venturi and I can see it's all nice and clear. We've stripped everything down that we need to. Have another visual check just around the carburettor. And so now we can start the cleaning process. I take a wire brush and a pair of pliers. Take the pair of pliers and I pull out a nice long wire brush bristle. I try and straighten it out as much as I possibly can. So now I take the straightened bristle and I poke it through the fuel holes and make sure they are completely clean. Personally, I spend some time here just making sure that I've cleaned it as well as I possibly can. Doing this diligently for each of the fuel holes will reap the benefits later. I move on next to the other fuel mixture screw hole here. Turn the carburettor around, you can see where it comes out here just before the butterfly there on the throttle. And the fact that it's passed right through here means that it's clear. The next place I would clean is here where we took the Phillips screw out and give that a real good diligent cleaning. And if we just tilt the light and have a look down there, we can see that there's a brass insert down inside there. I normally leave this in and clean very diligently inside of it because these are a little more difficult to remove in my experience, and I've never really had any adverse effects by doing it this way. We turn the carburettor right round here. We can now concentrate on this fuel adjustment screw hole here. But as you'll see, this is a larger hole, and if we turn it upside down and place some light in the venturi again, we can see the wire brush bristle coming out just there. And so being able to see the bristle and moving it in and out like that gives us some certainty that that's nice and clear. In fact, if we take a look here at the fuel holes that are behind the Welch plug again and place the wire brush bristles in each of these three, we'll soon see that when we look down the actual venturi, down the inlet of the carburettor, we'll see the wire brush bristle coming out into the inlet there. So each of these three should have the holes nice and clear so you can see the wire brush through into the centre, and then we can be sure again that these are nicely cleaned. As I've said before, it's always best to be very diligent about cleaning these holes because it will pay off big later. In fact, just to be thorough, we can shine the light again down the venturi and open the throttle, and when we do so, we can see the light coming through nicely. They're perfectly clean. And of course we can use the torch to check other fuel holes that they're nice and clear. So if we shine through the bottom there where the main jet goes, we can see that's nice and clear where that mixture screw goes. And that means I can move on now to these two holes here, and I shall be diligent in cleaning these two, and then we can move on to the other one here. As I mentioned earlier, if you have an airline and carburettor spray at your disposal, it's situations like this where you'd use them. Clean inside the fuel way there, the brass part where the needle valve sits, but I can see if it's clear in a different way. The brass inlet there is connected to that brass part there on the top, and so I blow through to see if it sounds nice and clear, which this one does. And then there's the float bowl vent hole here, so I'll make sure that's nice and clean with my bristle. And so when I'm happy that all the fuel holes are nice and clean, I would now fit the new Welch plug. And so I've just placed the correct size one in there from the kit. Now I'm aware that some people place these in with Ilamar, glue, stud lock, all those sorts of things, but I don't. And the reason I've never used those sorts of things is because this plug is made of a soft metal. And in being so, it means that when this plug is correctly press fitted, the soft metal presses into the metal of the carb body, creating a good seal. But the way it's commonly fitted is by use of a punch like this. And we simply take the nose of the punch, put it onto the Welch plug and hit with an hammer. And because this is such a small Welch plug and the metal is so soft, I only need to hit this once, and not too hard at that. Okay, so now we have the Welch plug in place. We now have to deal with the emulsion tube, making sure that it's nice and clean, and if it's not, then we can deal with it in the same way with the wire brush bristle. And when we're happy it's nice and clean and in a good state, we're going to refit it. We've got an open side there, and then there's a side there that's more flattened. So it goes in with the flattened side facing upwards, just like that. And it just needs to be dropped in like this. It doesn't need pushing in or pressing in. And next to go in is the brass insert screw. And making sure we're happy with its cleanliness, we can gently screw it in, remembering this is a soft metal and so it would be easy to damage the threads. And we screw it in, and we do it relatively tight but not too tight. And this is all we need. It'll seat it in just how it should be. Okay, so when we're happy with the main jet and that it's fitted okay, we now need to concentrate on the float. And it's fitted with the metal at the top, but we can't just fit it yet because we don't have the needle valve in place. And at the same time, we can't just take the needle valve and place that in on its own either. And that's because they need to go in together. And so the correct way to fit it is that the eye there on top of the needle valve is slid over this metal part here. And then together, they can now be put in place. And we can place that in now. So the needle valve is going inside its seat there, and we can lower them both down together. Now that's all nicely in place, we can now take the pin that we slid out earlier and we can slide it back through and out the other side and make it sort of equal each side. That's moving up and down nicely. The next thing we've got to do is place back on the float bowl. What's important though is to make sure we've got this O-ring fitted. Also we've got the spill off there. That needs to be fitted right in the corner on the right hand side at the top. Put that in place, making sure that the O-ring isn't hanging out the side anywhere, so just a good visual check there. And once we're happy, we can then put the screws back in and tighten them up. And the next thing I'd install is this screw here, the one with the brass insert in. This one doesn't have to be in a specific position like an adjustment screw, it's just got to be tightened right up to create a seal. And so the next thing I would fit now is the adjustment screw that fits in here. And remember that was the brass one, so we'll place that in now and we'll screw this in roughly to where it was when we screwed it out. It's sometimes a good idea to count how many half turns or how many full turns it took to take it out so you can put it in the same amount. Some people do, some people don't, but I put it in roughly where I found it. Because we've placed that screw in, we can now place this in. Make sure you do it that way round, as otherwise we'll have to take this idling screw back out again. And as before, when we put the idling screw in, we'll turn it in as many turns as approximately where we found it before we removed it. The more you screw it in, the more it's moving the throttle mechanism across, kind of approximately where we found it. Now we're happy that they're all fitted okay, we can turn the carburettor around and there's one more fuel adjustment screw we've got to place back in. We've got to remember that we took out a spring with this. So we'll place the spring back in first to make it easier, and it's quite tricky, and then we can take the screw itself and we can place that in, screw it in with a flat screwdriver as many turns approximately as we took it out. That's all fully rebuilt and sorted. Hopefully now this carburettor, when it goes back on the machine, will work fantastically. Thank you so much for watching.